When the world found out the Beatles were over, it wasn't through a press release or an official statement or an announcement. It was a subtle detail tucked inside the sleeve of Paul McCartney's solo debut album. Lovely flowers in her hair. Just a few typed up words, the question being, are you planning a new album or single with the Beatles? Paul's answer, no. It was the softest breakup in all of music history, and simultaneously, it was the beginning of something no one expected, 4 times over. But today, this is the story of McCartney, Paul's raw, homemade solo debut album.
Beach in the falling rain, mama, beach in the falling rain. I'm amazed the way you love me all the time. Baby, I'm amazed the way you pulled me out of time. Only man who's in the middle of something.
Crafted in and through heartbreak, released into a world of absolute frenzy, and quietly, defiantly brilliant. It's important to understand that the Beatles weren't just breaking up, they were completely unraveling in front of the public eye in real time. Lawsuits, headlines, real hurt feelings, the whole 9 yards, the whole shebang. And in the midst of it all, we have Paul McCartney disappearing off to a farm in Scotland with Linda, their kids, and the cool winds of uncertainty. What a rush. But the reality was he wasn't okay. He drank, he slept too much, and he had a lot of extra time to think, and to wonder, was it all over? And not just for the band, of course, but for himself. Like, what did Paul McCartney even mean without the Beatles? And then he started recording. Not in a studio, no top-of-the-line engineers around the corner, just his 4-track tape machine, mic, and his own 2 hands. He played every single instrument himself. He wrote whenever he felt like it, and he sang into the silence, into the void. No band, no pressure, no plan, just Paul. Raw, rambling, and human.
He was hard pressed to find a spot. I used to ride on my fast city line. And we was lonely.
These weren't chart-chasing songs. They were diary entries, audio snapshots of a man undergoing emotional freefall, who still couldn't stop making music despite the possible surrounding calamity. That just goes to show his devotion. The result, McCartney. An album that's an amalgamation of strange, lovely sketches and subdued genius. Maybe I'm amazed. The vital emotional centerpiece, a love letter to Linda and to the strength that she gave him in a vulnerable time.
Maybe I'm afraid of the way I love you.
Every night, weary, but there's a tenderness there. Junk, a whimsical, melancholy, gently surreal. Some tracks were fragments, others were nearly perfect, but as a unit, all together, they formed a portrait, not intentionally of a legend, but just of a man who's trying to feel whole again, just something real. The album came out with a self-written Q&A tucked into the sleeve, and that's where Paul decided to just so casually, nonchalantly drop the fact that the Beatles were done. I know. He didn't say the band didn't exist anymore. It was just a simple no to the question of were there any future plans to record any album or singles or, write with the Beatles. But that no sent shockwaves throughout the entire world. Okay, fans were weeping. The headlines were running rampant. And John Lennon, who thought he quit first, was mad, irate. Paul didn't mean to break the news like that, but In the end, McCartney was more than just an album. It was a historical artifact. It was the ushering in of a new era, a new day. Some called it underwhelming. Others called it valiant. But one thing is true. Over time, McCartney certainly earned its place. And not as this like grand statement, but more of like a personal one. Actually, when you really think about it, it's the exact opposite of Abbey Road. There was an absence of that studio sheen. There was no band polish, right? Like it lacked all that. But it did rely heavily on just some good old-fashioned soul. Without even trying to, Paul wound up reinventing the idea of a solo album. He didn't wait around for approval. He didn't try to out-Beatle the Beatles and, do anything extravagant or crazy or reinvent the wheel. He ended up reinventing the wheel. And in doing so, he proved that he didn't need a team of legends to make music that mattered. It wasn't perfect, but it was perfectly his. McCartney was Paul's grief turned into melody, his breakdowns transformed into brushstrokes. That's the secret sauce right there. And though it started in isolation, it laid the groundwork for everything that came next: wings, stadiums, comebacks. But it all started with a feeble whisper. Paul McCartney in 1970 had no clue where he was headed, where he was going. He just knew he had to go. Just let go and begin. McCartney wasn't his swan song. On the contrary, it was the first page of a new chapter, of a new story. One that would stretch across decades and generations and bend genres. The world was anticipating a grand entrance. Instead, they got Paul McCartney stumbling in, barefoot, blinking, tape recorder in hand. You get the picture. Remember earlier when I said that it wasn't perfect, but it was perfectly his? That's poetic and all, but I take it back because it was pretty perfect.